God is the witness to all suffering, and in the darkest of places, faith is not a fragile hope, but an unshakable shield. This was the quiet truth that lived in the hearts of those who served in the Harrington mansion. From the outside, the estate was a masterpiece of opulence, gleaming marble floors, crystal chandeliers that dripped light, and manicured gardens that stretched to the horizon. But within its gilded walls, it was a suffocating hell ruled not by law, but by the tyrannical whims of its mistress, Claudia Harrington. Every word spoken, every step taken by the household staff was measured and judged. A whisper could be mistaken for insubordination, a moment's hesitation for incompetence. The master of this domain, Claudia, was a woman who craved absolute control. Her power, an intoxicating drug fueled by the fear of those beneath her. The smallest transgression, a faint smudge on a silver spoon, a curtain hanging a fraction of an inch too low, a cup of tea not poured with enough haste, was met with a withering tirade of insults. No one dared to speak up, for their silence was a pact made out of necessity. Their families depended on their wages, and for them, this soul-crushing humiliation was the price of survival. Among the ranks was Agnes, the head housekeeper. 15 years of service had bent her back and silvered her hair, but it had not dimmed the gentle light in her eyes. Every night, by the dim glow of a single candle, she would kneel and whisper prayers, her trembling hands clutching a worn Bible. She prayed for courage, for endurance, and for the Lord to watch over them all, whispering her supplications into the silence of her small Spartan room. Then there was Selena. The newest member of the staff, she carried herself with a quiet dignity that set her apart. She had known deep loss and hardship in her past, but those trials had forged in her a resilient spirit. In the face of Claudia's cruelty, her faith was not a passive belief, but an active fire, a constant inner dialogue with the divine. She held a memory of her mother's words like a talisman. "My child, even in the deepest darkness, God sees your worth." The storm of abuse was a constant presence, but it began to intensify. It was no longer about simple mistakes. It was about deliberate public degradation. Claudia seemed to delight in finding new ways to humiliate her staff. One evening, an old silver serving spoon was found with a faint tarnish. Claudia held it up for all to see, her voice a brittle whip lashing through the kitchen. "Look at this! Are your eyes so useless you can't see what's right in front of you? We might as well be eating from a trough." The other servants bowed their heads, but Selena's hands clenched into fists, her knuckles white. "Lord, give me strength to endure," she prayed silently. The true breaking point came during a small, elegant dinner party. The air was filled with the murmur of polite conversation and the delicate clinking of glasses. The room itself seemed to mock them with its beauty. This was Claudia's stage, and her performance was one of malicious cruelty. She called Selena forward, and with a saccharine smile, instructed her to pour wine for a guest. Selena, though new, had always been meticulous, but Claudia's eyes, cold and calculating, were fixed on her, waiting for a moment of weakness. Selena's hand trembled slightly as she held the heavy carafe. It was all the cue Claudia needed. With a flick of her wrist, she bumped Selena's arm, sending a splash of deep red wine onto the front of her pristine white apron. A gasp rippled through the guests, but it was nothing compared to the laughter that followed. Claudia's laugh was a sharp, ugly sound devoid of humor. "Clumsy girl! Did they find you on the streets? What a disgrace!" she sneered, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. A wave of scalding humiliation washed over Selena. Her face burned, and for a moment her vision blurred with tears. The guests stared, and the other servants looked down, their faces a mask of shame and complicity. But then, through the haze, she heard her mother's words again, as clear as if she were standing right beside her. "Even in the darkness, God sees your worth." The words weren't just a memory. They were a thunderclap, a call to action. Selena's head, which had been bowed in shame, slowly lifted. She looked directly at Claudia, her eyes clear and filled with a resolve that shocked everyone. The air grew still, the background noise of the party suddenly silenced. "Respect," she said, her voice trembling at first, but gaining strength with every syllable, "is earned through humanity, not commanded by fear. Before God, we are all equal." A collective gasp filled the room. No one could believe a servant had dared to speak to their mistress in such a way. Claudia's face contorted in a mix of rage and disbelief. "You audacious girl, get out! You're fired!" she shrieked, her carefully constructed facade shattering. But before Selena could respond, Agnes, the gentle old housekeeper, stepped forward. Her body was frail, but her voice was a bedrock of courage. "She speaks the truth," Agnes said, her voice shaking with emotion. "We are not objects to be used and discarded. God created us as people with dignity." It was a plea, a sermon, a rebellion all at once. And then, one by one, the other servants followed suit. A quiet kitchen boy, a stoic gardener, a young maid who rarely spoke. Each of them raised their heads, their eyes meeting Claudia's. They didn't speak, but their silent defiance was a roar. The room was heavy with tension, a rebellion brewing in the heart of the home. Claudia's face was a mask of panic. For the first time, her power was not absolute. She was a queen with no subjects, an empress with no army. "Get out! You're all leeches!" she screamed, her voice cracking. But this time, no one cowered. Agnes's voice, now steady, echoed through the silence. "God has given us the courage to stand. It is better to lose our jobs than to lose our souls." Just as the situation teetered on the brink, the front door opened and a figure appeared. It was Mr. Harrington, returned unexpectedly from his business trip. He stood there, his face a mask of confusion, his briefcase still in his hand, observing the unprecedented scene before him. Selena, her spirit now fully ignited, stepped forward. "Sir," she said, her voice clear and strong, "we are your employees, not your slaves. For years your wife has ruled this house with cruelty and fear, not with respect. God is a witness to the suffering we have endured." "Mr. Harrington looked from Selena to his wife, then to the defiant faces of the servants. The facade of his perfect life had been broken. He saw the truth in their eyes. He looked at Claudia not with anger, but with a deep, weary disappointment. "Enough," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I will not allow this cruelty to exist in my house, not even from my own wife." Claudia's face flushed with shame and fury, but her bravado was gone. She was exposed, her power stripped away. Without another word, she turned and fled the room, leaving behind a silence that was no longer suffocating, but full of promise. The servants began to weep, hugging one another in a mixture of relief and disbelief. The chains of fear had finally been broken. Agnes took Selena's hand, her old eyes brimming with tears. "God sent you to us," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "You did what we were too afraid to do for 15 years. Selena, tears streaming down her face, smiled. "We are no longer invisible," she replied. "He never forgot us,